What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading. Today, we're going to take a look at why the next 24 hours are going to be crazy for crypto. This is not clickbait. There are a whole bunch of catalysts coming up in the next 24 hours that you need to know about. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. So today, guys, there's three catalysts that are coming up. The first two are initial jobless claims and GDP. And basically what you would want to see for like a bullish outcome would be for initial jobless claims to come in slightly higher than expected, and for the GDP revision for Q2 to come in slightly lower than expected. This would basically signal that the economy is weakening, which would, of course, result in more Fed cuts. As a fun fact, guys, the ideal scenario for assets to rally, whether it's crypto or otherwise, is an economy that's like slightly weak so that the Fed is a little bit more dovish, but is not so weak that it starts to look like a recession, if that makes any sense. Like, you want a little bit of softness, not too much, kind of like the type of data that's come out that made Jerome be more dovish than expected last Friday. You kind of want to be seeing more of that. If initial jobless claims comes in lower than expected, or GDP comes in stronger, that's not the end of the world. If there's a small pullback because of that, it's really funny whenever I mention these catalysts, and if they come out like more bearish, and people start saying, well, are you now saying that everything is over? No, these are just many data points to be watching, and they're just something, especially if you're trading in the short term, to keep an eye out for the next day or two. Anyways, the third catalyst, guys, that you need to be watching is actually really interesting, and this is Christopher Waller, one of the Fed governors, is going to be speaking later today. And normally when Fed governors speak, it doesn't really matter because, if it's not Jerome, then no one cares. But the thing is that this Governor Waller, he's basically emerging as the top pick as someone who will replace Jerome Powell. This ties into this really interesting thing I'm sure some of you guys have heard about, which is like the shadow Fed chair, that basically if people know that that Christopher Waller is going to be replacing Jerome Powell, well, it's still not confirmed, but if that's what most investors believe, then people are going to start watching what Waller is saying even more so than Powell. I know it's a little bit like, kind of like political and like tricky to wrap your head around, but the key takeaway being is that what Christopher Waller says later today could have an impact on the market. And of course, he's been pretty dovish because he's trying to be on Trump's good side. And if more and more people believe that, if Trump was to say, for example, come out later today or even after Waller speaks and being like, yeah, I really like this guy, he's my top pick, which he's already kind of hinted before, then this would probably cause the markets to rally, because then people would say, well, now we should start listening to what Christopher Waller is saying, because he's going to be the next guy in charge, basically, because the markets are always kind of forward looking in that sense. Of course, that brings me to the price action here for Bitcoin. It's looking really interesting. I do think that Bitcoin's probably going to rally back up to the Bollinger Band moving average on the daily here. What's really interesting is that if you actually zoom out, that these are trend lines that I drew a while ago, I think maybe earlier this week or last week, and these long-term trend lines actually seem to have caught Bitcoin's recent price action here pretty perfectly. Members of the Coin Bureau Club will know this because I was actually sharing these charts in the Discord. But anyways, yeah, Bitcoin is looking good. It looks like it's going to have a little bit of a bounce here up to around 116,000. And you guys might remember that there's still that CME gap at around 117.2 thousand. And looking at the CME chart here, you can see that it's looking really nice. Looks like there was some bottoming pattern here, and it looks like Bitcoin's going to start rallying up to this level. Will it be hit later this week? I actually hope. I mean, it depends again on what happens with these catalysts later today. It's possible that Bitcoin could hit this 117K level, let's say today or tomorrow, especially if the PCE comes in lower than expected tomorrow. That's another thing to be watching for tomorrow, is the PCE, which is the Fed watches for its rate cuts. But of course, it depends on how this mix of catalysts comes out. If they all come out, like bearish or neutral, then of course, like, Bitcoin's not going to be rallying up to 117,000 anytime soon. But again, on the daily chart here for the Bitcoin chart, looks like Bitcoin's going to bounce to 116,000. And you remember there's a CME gap at 117,000. The idea that Bitcoin could rally up to this level in the next couple of days, I think, is not far-fetched. And I would say almost like for sure that we would see that start to happen in September as investors come back. And you can refer to yesterday's video as to why I'm bullish on September if you think that September is going to be like another down-only month or whatever. Anyways, guys, if you're enjoying the video so far, then I do need to tell you about the Coin Bureau deals page. That's where we have a 20% trading fee discount and up to $600 of bonuses on Binance, up to 16% APY on Nexo, up to $60,000 in rewards on Bybit, 10% cash back for life, and 2x points multiplier on Axiom, which is where you can trade like meme coins on Solana. I think they're going to be doing an airdrop or something. I don't know if they've confirmed it, but obviously when you have these points, that's probably what's going to happen. Of course, we have 10% off Air Aaron's Better Traders course here. We have up to $100,000 on 2-bit with a welcome bonus and up to 50% fee discount for life. A whole bunch of awesome deals here, guys, on exchanges, on courses, on trading bots and wallets and everything you could possibly need. So do check that out using the link in the description. I'm sure you'll find a deal in there that works for you. When you use these deals, it helps you out, it helps us out, and it helps out our partners. So if you like what you're seeing here in these videos, then do check out those deals. It really helps us out. Anyways, moving on now to altcoins, of course, which I'm sure you're all wondering about. What's really funny is that altcoins have basically, well, arguably have been chopping in a range for all of August. They've literally just been chopping, well, on others between 280 billion and 310 billion, roughly, literally just been chopping. But it's really funny that, like, you know, with this chop, people are just saying, oh my God, it's over. This is horrible. I can't stand it. And it's like, man, you're just resetting positioning and sentiment for another move higher. Like, for God's sake, be a little bit patient. Anyways, you can see that similarly to Bitcoin, it looks like others is going to be retesting this 310 billion level. Some of you guys might remember that for others to get above 310 billion, that's kind of one of the main indicators I'm watching to get like a full-blown altcoin season. Once others breaks out of this range, which you could argue it's been chopping in basically, you could potentially argue it's been chopping in, like, you know, since mid-July, then once it breaks out of this range, that's when we're going to get the altcoin season of more mid-cap and small-cap participation. For now, of course, it's been centered around large caps like Ethereum and Solana, and there's no denying that there's been a rally there. But when it comes to altcoins, last thing I'll mention there, some of you guys might remember, I found some really interesting parallels between the Russell 2000 and altcoins, and you'll notice that back in 2020 and late 2020, when the Russell 2000 broke out, then basically that's when altcoin season happened last time, and you can see that we're starting to see a breakout in the Russell 2000 here. You might say, oh, well, the breakout level's a little bit higher. It's not at the level that you drawn, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that you can see the Russell 2000 is breaking out, and that basically suggests that in the next couple of weeks, we will finally get that kind of broad altcoin season, because again, that's exactly what we saw in the previous cycle. There's a lot of overlap in small caps in small cap stocks in terms of where they lie on the risk spectrum. Like, it's mostly retail investors trading them, just like altcoins. Small cap stocks are more sensitive to like interest rate changes or potential changes to interest rates, right? And again, this looks like it's breaking out, and that suggests that historically speaking, we're going to see altcoins follow suit, you know, in the not too distant future. And you know, even with Trump launching his World Liberty financial token on Monday and stuff like that, you know. Anyways, topic for another time. For Ethereum, guys, on the daily, I'm sure some people are frustrated with Ethereum because it's also now just basically been chopping arguably in a range between, let's say, 4,300, 4,400, and like 4,800. Of course, the more that Ethereum chops, this is something I've been mentioning in many videos, is that when the moment that Ethereum starts chopping, Solana starts rallying. What you're looking at here, guys, is the Sol ETH chart. As you can see, I would argue that Sol ETH here has bottomed. In my opinion, it's going to rally at least up to the Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly here, which would be, I think, roughly another, what, like 50 or 30% gain against Ethereum. So it's possible that Ethereum will chop here, continue chopping in this range between, let's say, again, 3,600, 4,400, or like between 4,400, 4,800. It'll keep chopping here for another few days while Solana really starts taking off, and Solana could see a pump of whatever it is, you know, another 20, 30%. So yeah, that's something to watch. It's something I've been flagging for a while now. And it's really funny, you know, everyone was looking at the Solana chart and thinking, oh my God, it looks like a massive like head and shoulders pattern and it's going to go down. And I'm like, man, this is again, like just consolidation, you know, preparing for another big move higher. That's what we saw in Solana. That's what we're seeing on others now. Actually reminds me, one thing I wanted to point out, if you zoom out to the weekly on others, you see this kind of like, you know, nasty looking, just like bunch of like, you know, almost bearish looking like combination of weekly candles, right? What's really fascinating is that it reminds me a lot of what we saw with Ethereum before it took off like earlier this year, literally just like a couple months ago. See that? Like Ethereum was just like chopping. It's like crazy. It's like, it's literally in the exact same range. It's like for a month and a half, and then it had a little bit of a pullback at the end, and then it just went straight up like a rocket ship. What are the chances that we see the same thing here with other altcoins? You know, just food for thought. Anyways, guys, if you did make it this far and you did find that information helpful, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ping that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.